Hello everyone and welcome to SwitchUp. In today's video we're going to have a look at our favourite first party games, so of course games developed by Nintendo. Now for this I've got a very special guest, a good friend of mine. I've got Dave Morris from Savedex Gaming. How you doing, Dave? You okay?
Hello Glen, thanks for having me on here. Really excited to talk about these.
No worries. Now myself and Mark obviously over here at SwitchUp, we're of course fans of the Switch and fans of Nintendo, but Dave definitely trumps us in that respect, so I thought it'd be interesting to get his views on his favourite games as well of course as my own. So which games have we picked? Well, let's find out. Okay Dave, seeing as you are our guest, I'm going to let you start. We're going to pick 3 games each, by the way, so of course 6 in total. So what is your first favourite game from Nintendo on the Switch?
Okay, I had quite a few contenders. My top 2 were very easy, but my number 3 was difficult, and I really wish you'd said top 5 to me. That would have been easier. So what I'm going to go for my third place shot is Mario Party Superstars. And I did on my channel give this my personal game of the year last year.
Yeah, I remember, yeah.
So I thought it'd be rude not to include this. And if we were going to go for say your scoring system, this would not beat some other games I could have chosen, but this is not so much a scoring system for this top 3, it's my personal favourite. And Mario Party was a series I played a lot when I was younger on the N64 and GameCube, but Mario Party 5 was the last one I played. I didn't play 6, 7 or 8, but then after that they did a different formula, like with 9 and 10, it just wasn't the same. And then Super Mario Party sort of brought it back in the right direction, and at the time I really enjoyed it. But when Mario Party Superstars came out and they really brought the old formula back with old boards as well, 100 minigames included, I now don't like Super Mario Party because this game showed me this is what Mario Party was, and hopefully if they keep going with this with their newer ones, this is what Mario Party always should have been.
Yeah, I mean I don't have a huge amount of experience with the party games, to be perfectly honest. It wasn't a series that I really dabbled in on the N64, but I did play the Super Mario Party that you mentioned, and my biggest gripe with it, I mean I enjoyed it, don't get me wrong, but it was the enforced control system that they used in terms of how you had to use the joycon.
Super Mario Party is actually unplayable for me now because 3 of my 4 Joy-Cons, the SL and SR buttons, don't work on them. Right. So I can't actually activate the controllers to play the game. So multiplayer. But this one, you can use the Pro controller. You just have normal button controls. You could probably even use that N64 controller with it. I've not tested that. But really, the whole point of Mario Party is it is designed for multiplayer, and this one has full online from the get-go, and I've been playing that with my brother and with my wife's brother as well online, and it works well. And really, it's all about screwing over your opponents, basically. It's like a really unfair game at its heart. It's quite mean and cynical in a way, but it's quite competitive. Yeah, you have all these really fun mini games they've brought back from the older games. They've brought back 5 boards from the N64 games, and it is a shame there's not more. That is a personal gripe, and I would love to see them add more as DLC, maybe have them included with an expansion pack as well. But what is there, it's really good, and it's the most fun I had with a game last year.
I do find it quite interesting that Nintendo's what would you call them, spin-off games, I guess is the best way of describing them. You know, your sports games in particular have all had this model where more content is added later, which, you know, is some people like, some people don't, which is fair enough, but they haven't used that with the Mario Party games where perhaps you might have expected them to. Yeah,
and I did expect them to do that with this, but the fact that they didn't advertise it before the game came out made me think maybe they're not.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm personally not a fan of them adding content on afterwards because it's robbing gameplay, and the fact that, because you used to, we're getting Daisy and Shy Guy added to Mario Strikers. Back in the day, in my day, you would unlock them through gameplay,
exactly,
and that was like a reward for playing the game. But now you're just getting them added on later. It's less for the single player to do. But back on Mario Party, I mean, again, it's such a highly replayable game. It could have done with a few more boards, that's true, but the boards they've chosen are good. The mini games they've chosen for the most part are really good, and it's just the most fun. Again, like I said, I've just been playing it recently as well with friends online, and just have such a great time with this.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. That's a good pick, an interesting pick actually. It's not one that I considered myself, but yeah, nice, good. Right, my first one then. I'm like you, I struggled a bit. I had two definites and then wasn't quite sure for the third one. But I've gone for Breath of the Wild. Now, might seem like an obvious pick. Well, I'm sure it is an obvious pick. Absolute no-brainer for most people. And whilst I did enjoy it, it is my number 3 from the 3 games that I'm about to mention. In terms of it as a game, I found it a very enjoyable experience. I bought it day one with the Switch, as most people did, I'm sure. And I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. As a Zelda game, being a bit old school, being from kind of the top-down era, it wasn't my idea of the perfect Zelda, if you like, but that's irrelevant. Times move on and things change, and I'm very impressed with what they did with it. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how they improve the formula with the sequel, when we do finally get it.
Oh yeah, and see, I had a similar sort of mindset going into you, although, because I started with Ocarina of Time, so the 3D traditional Zelda formula is what I'm more adept to.
Yeah.
And so yeah, the change in the formula completely there's a few things. I enjoyed the open world aspect of it, but I just wish there were more like proper dungeons in it. So if you sort of took this sort of Breath of the Wild's open world with Skyward Sword's dungeons, I think there you could get a perfect blend there. But obviously there's all those shrines, which each shrine is like a room or two of a dungeon in themselves. But really, this is one I have kept coming back to just to mess around and explore the world. And it's such a big world to explore, and I just found myself constantly getting distracted in it, where I'll be going towards the main objective, and then suddenly I'm like, oh, what's over here? There's an interesting curio here.
Yeah, I mean, I loved the world. It was quite empty, but to be fair, I think that was by design. Obviously, the story alludes to this desolate land, and obviously the things that have happened that have been explored further still in the Warriors game that followed it. But the reason that this is my number 3, it was very close between this and Metroid Dread. And whilst generally as a gamer I prefer kind of a concise experience, and Dread offers that more than this, in my opinion, as you just mentioned, and it's exactly right, it's that sense of freedom that this game gives you, and just exploring the world that gives it the edge over Dread for me. But what a great way to start the Switch off this was.
Oh yeah, it was both the Wii U swan song and the Switch's like big bang, really, wasn't it?
It really was. Yeah, it was quite a nice way of doing it in some respects. I know it, obviously, as you say, it started as a Wii U game in principle, and came to the Wii U, it was nice to see the Wii U get that last last hurrah, if you like. But it was also nice to start the Switch era off with that big game too. Similar to like what was it? Was it Twilight Princess that did that? It was, wasn't it?
Yes, they sort of put the Wii controls to it on the Wii version.
That's right. Yeah. Right, let's move on to your number 2, if you like. What's your second favourite?
Well, it's the other big Nintendo game from that same year, and that is Super Mario Odyssey.
Okay.
So basically, 3D collectathons is my favourite genre of game. Like Banjo-Kazooie is my favourite game of all time. Mario 64 is right up there. And I remember when this was first shown at the January presentation they did, that was like 3 or 4 in the morning for us. And you see like Mario jump out of that manhole, and it doesn't really show the main capture mechanic, but it did show him using his hat to sort of bounce, to throw and bounce off to get extra moves. And I thought, what a great evolution for Mario that is, in the fact that they can expand his moveset like that, all these extra moves, but they haven't changed anything about his character because he's always had that hat. And it's like, I know before, like with the Flood pack, but he still had like a water pack on his back. Here, nothing changed about him. And then at E3, they showed off, actually, he can capture enemies and sort of use their abilities. And using sort of enemies in your favour has been a thing in Mario since the beginning. Like Koopa Troopers, you can use their shells as an attack as well. You can ride on Lakitu's clouds, things like that.
The shoe, wasn't it, in Mario 3?
Yes, yeah, the Karibo shoe.
Karibo shoe, that was it, yeah.
Bouncing off bullet bills to get over pits, things like that. But now you can actually throw your hat, capture them, possess them, if you will, and like you capture a bullet bill, you can use it to propel yourself over long distances. You can capture a Lakitu to go fishing. They put in like new enemies, sort of like these birds with long beaks that can be used to scale up these walls. And it was just such a sort of a way to really make use of the enemies in Mario in a different way. And I know there's obviously, like we're saying, something about Breath of the Wild could be too big. Sometimes Mario Odyssey had that same thing. Like there are the moons themselves. Sometimes it can be a bit sort of, what's the words, like there's too many of them. And
yeah, it feels a little superfluous at times, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think if they did a sequel to this, one way to fix that would be to have a secondary collectible, so the easier to obtain moons could be something like the blue coins in Mario Sunshine, where you trade 10 of them in for a proper shine. I've actually played through this game like 5 times now, like once a year pretty much. Yeah. And only once have I properly 100%ed everything. But I just love explore. I just love collectathons. I just love like finding everything again. And when you know the worlds from the second playthrough, I actually enjoyed it more.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, you say that about enjoying it more the second time round. I mean, I enjoyed it when I played it, very much so, don't get me wrong. But do you know my biggest problem with Mario games, certainly 3D Mario games, and I'm well prepared to for many people to disagree with me here, but I feel that Nintendo got it so right with their first 3D Mario game. Obviously, I'm talking about Mario 64, that I don't think any game since 3D Mario game has matched it. And don't get me wrong, I can appreciate Galaxy, for example, is an absolute masterpiece, and in many ways technically it does surpass 64.
Yeah.
But in terms of the layout of the levels of 64, I thought it was perfect. Having the paintings that you jumped into, having the 6 stars that you had to get, and wasn't there a 7th based on coins, red coins, 100 coins, sorry, that's right. I just thought it was the perfect formula. So whilst I do appreciate that mechanics have improved in games since, in terms of level design or level structure is probably the best word, I just don't think any game since has matched it. And any game I play, any Mario game I play, because of that reason, after that, as much as I can think, yeah, this is great, it's not Mario 64. And that's a very personal problem, but it is my problem with it, you know?
Yeah, that's I can agree to that. Like, no Mario game, or 3D Mario game at least, is going to top Mario 64 for me, but Mario Odyssey comes close.
Yeah, no, good stuff. Right, my second game then is Pikmin 3. Now, I don't know what the general consensus will be there. Probably an unpopular opinion. I know there's so many first party games that are I'm sure people would pick over this one, but for me, I love the Pikmin series and always have done, going all the way back to the first game on the GameCube, which I bought on a bit of a whim. I was in PC World one day, I had that in one hand and Doshin the Giant. Do you remember that game?
Oh my goodness, that's a very, very rare one now, isn't it?
Is it? That's quite upsetting to hear, because I had to pick out of one of those two games and I chose Pikmin, but no, that's by the by. But as soon as I played Pikmin, I absolutely loved it, and it kind of goes, or it's to do with the feeling of being, you know, a youngster and playing in your back garden with toy soldiers, you know, that idea of having small characters and everything's overgrown. I always loved that concept.
Oh, I like seeing giant worlds.
Yeah, exactly, and obviously that's the premise of Pikmin. The first game, it was about crash landing on a planet and having to find your spaceship parts, and this third game, it's about finding fruit for sustenance to keep you and your crewmates alive whilst you try and get off of, again, an uncharted planet. And obviously the Pikmin come into play, the small little creatures that live on said planet, in that you can pull them out the ground and then they will be at your side and help you and assist you in clearing debris or finding the things that you need and carrying them, and you are pretty much defenseless without them. They'll take on creatures and what have you, but they themselves are not particularly strong. And this is what I love about Pikmin, is that it's basically an RTS, but the creatures, you have that emotional pull with them that you don't necessarily have in games of a similar ilk. And that's always what's got me in Pikmin, is trying to complete a day without losing any, and if you don't, starting again, you know.
And when they die, they make this little noise, don't they? It's so sad. You see their ghost come up out of them. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And the worst bit is when you finish the day.
Oh,
and you've done really well,
one.
And then you leave one behind. Yeah, and it's like,
you
no.
see it get eaten. Like...
Yeah, and it even shows you it, like that your spaceship flies off and you just see the creatures like, oh no, it's bad. It's bad. Yeah. But I love the Pikmin series. I loved Pikmin 1 and 2, of course, on the GameCube, and then Pikmin 3 on the Wii U, as it was to begin with, of course, and then it came over to the Switch. I'm very disappointed we've not had a Pikmin 4 by now. I mean, I remember there was that quote, was it Miyamoto, that said, it's effectively finished or it's on the way, and then it
very nearly done. 6.5 years ago, it was very nearly done.
Yeah, it's very strange.
I reckon that game had like a 50-year development cycle for it to be almost done 6 years ago.
I think Miyamoto just forgot. He's like, he put it under his pillow or something and forgot about it.
Or was he talking about Hey Pikmin?
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? But whatever happened to Pikmin 4, it never materialised. But Pikmin is a series that I love. My wife loves Pikmin 2, and we've played it together. There's that bingo mini game as well that's a huge amount of fun. Yeah, I know you enjoy it, mate, so you talk about it. Go on.
I think Bingo Battle is probably the greatest multiplayer mode in a single player game. I mean, it's just so good. You got your two sides and you got to raise your Pikmin, and just there's like a bingo card. Collect these fruits or these items, these enemies, bring them back to your ship, and you have to make a line before the other one does. And sometimes there'll be an item there's only one of them available, or you see a certain fruit and you see your opponent needs that one, so you go and you get out of your way to grab that first to stop them getting it. You can sort of get items to sort of drop rocks on the other person, things like that. It's just a really fun mode, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean, I played the bingo mode on the Wii U version because it was on there. It was DLC, I believe. It wasn't part of the package. But I actually got it via the Club Nintendo points. Do you remember, used to get?
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I bought the DLC for Pikmin 3 via those points, and it was great. And obviously it comes as part of the deal, on the cartridge on the Switch.
Yeah.
And whilst I'm not saying it's a good enough incentive if you've played Pikmin 3 before, solely that to buy the game again, what I will say is it is a very good addition. It is a very good add-on. Some people say sometimes that these ports don't get a huge amount. Actually, that game is a huge amount of fun, and it's a very welcome addition to the Switch version. That's my number 2. So what's your top first party game then, Dave, on the Switch?
And so my number 1 is the one that I've played the most, over double what my second most played game is, and that's Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Now, as Glenn mentioned at the beginning, I am the big Nintendo guy, so obviously my number 1 pick's going to be the big celebration of Nintendo, if you'd like to call it that. So, I mean, I'm not big on fighting games usually. I can play things like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, I enjoy them, but mostly in smaller doses. But the platform fighters, I mean, there's been others as well that I've enjoyed as well. I just really do resonate with them more. Maybe it's because I'm a platforming fan as well. But just the sheer amount, and a big factor of Smash Bros. Is not just the game itself, but the hype before one comes out, and you've got what characters could be added, and you get all the speculation videos, you get the reveal trailers, and the way they plan out these reveal trailers, they tease you, they make you think it's something else, and it's just always such a good reveal when they do it, whether you like the character or not. And the gameplay itself, it's just, you've got so much wealth of options in there. There's so much variety, not just in the characters, but in sort of how the stages are laid out, whether you want hazards on or not, whether items you can switch on or off, or decide which ones you want. and it's such a competitive one. It's the one I've played the most online, I would say. And yeah, this one just is one I can just lose myself in for so long, and just seeing all the different characters and the way they've translated the moves from their series and faithfully recreate them. Sakurai he overworks himself, he makes himself ill making these games, and you can really see that in the results. There's just so much detail, so much polish in there.
Yeah, you know, when I had this idea to do this video, Dave, and obviously I asked if you'd like to do it with me, the main reason was because I half expected you to pick Smash Brothers, and it's one game series that I just can't talk about because I don't play it. I have played it, don't get me wrong, but I'm a big fighting game fan, as you know, but Smash Brothers is just never one that I've been able to get into consistently. You know, I'm more the traditional one-on-one fighters, ones you just mentioned, funny enough, and I wanted to get your take on this series because it's just it would never get mentioned on the channel. Do you know what I mean? And I remember, like, you know, Dave and me, we go back a long way, and you know, I'm talking all the way back to uni. And I remember the Wii version of this game when it was in development, and I remember you almost give me like daily updates of what's been released or what's, you know, the latest rumor and stuff. You know, it's just fascinating to talk about the game series that we love and how different they can be from one person to the next. So what is it about this? And obviously, don't get me wrong, I appreciate the fact it has the Mario or Nintendo characters in it, and as you said, the way that they translate moves from their game series into this game, I can see that being a big pull. But aside from that, moving away from that, just in terms of it being a pure fighter, what is it that appeals to you about this series more than other fighting games?
It's the variety is one thing, and again, I don't mean like 80 characters, whatever. I mean in the fact that it's not you're always standing next to each other facing them. Yeah. Like the levels, there's a lot of different stages in this, and like over 100, and they're all laid out differently. So you can walk around freely, you can jump, double jump, triple jump in it. Obviously there's the whole items thing, and it's just so much. Again, it plays. So if I introduce someone to, say, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, all they would do is button bash, and that annoys me. But with Smash Brothers, you can't do that. You need to, but it's easy enough because you only use 2 buttons for fighting, one for normal attacks and one for your special attacks. And it's easy enough to sort of play about with a character while you're away just to see what moves they do. And there's more depth to it than that. You've got, like, you can charge up smash attacks to smash them off, and it's just the feel of the game. The dodging you can do, the rolling, and when you get the hang of it, it's so satisfying just to see you pull off a perfect smash move to smash them off the stage. Yeah, and that's another thing. Although health bars is an option in it, the main thing is you're getting their damage up, and then the more damage they have, the further they fly when you hit them. Yeah. And so just seeing that payoff, so you can be strategic and sort of like use projectiles, whatever, to do small damage so that they'll go flying further when you actually do a powerful move on them, or you can just go in all guns blazing if you want. And it's just that variety that I really like, and sort of like the level of strategy. Yeah.
I mean, I bought the first one on the N64 many years ago now. And I think it had like 8 characters. Could be wrong there. It was about that anyway.
And four unlockables as well.
Oh, okay, fair play. And I enjoyed it, don't get me wrong. But again, being that traditional fighting game fan, and obviously at that time, N64 era, you were starting to move away from 2D fighters and moving into 3D arena-based fighters.
Oh, yeah.
So I kind of half expected it to be something like that. And I remember booting it up for the first time and not really knowing what to think of it, because it was a 2D fighter, but it wasn't a traditional one. I didn't really know what I thought of it, and I did grow to love it, don't get me wrong, and I've bought practically every one of them since, but it never quite gained that place in my heart that the other series over the years had, and like I say, it is nice to hear a true fan of the series explain why, because I can see it, I can hear it in your voice, and I can see the appeal. It just doesn't quite resonate with me as much, Right, my number one, it's not even close. Like, it's an absolute out on its own number one, and it is The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening as much as I've already had a Zelda game on here, but I did say whilst talking about Breath of the Wild that I'm very much from the top-down 2D Zelda school of thought, and this game in its original format, obviously back on the Game Boy, was one of my favourite games, or still is one of my favourite games of all time. I remember getting it for Christmas one year. I don't know what made my mum and dad buy it. I didn't ask for it. They had a fair play. That's quite a pick there, to pick all the games off the shelf and pick one as good as that without any intuition or input. But what a game! What a great game! I remember it wasn't loved as much at the time. Obviously, I think it was the fourth Zelda game you had. Zelda. It was, wasn't it? You had Link, Zelda 1 and 2, sorry, on the NES. You had obviously Link to the Past, and then this one. And this was very different. It had a different sort of humour about it. It was perhaps slightly more linear in some respects. You had kind of that fetch quest that ran throughout the whole game. It kind of kept you constantly, looking for something. The world itself, obviously, it wasn't in Hyrule. It was a very different sort of Zelda. Probably down to the limitations of the Game Boy, but wow, what a job they did in bringing a Zelda game to that handheld,
Oh yeah, I love hearing stories about some games, like Mario's design, for example, is based on the limitations of the hardware at the time. Like, they couldn't do hair, they couldn't get a mouth so he has a moustache, and things like that. So yeah, the fact that they worked with what they had with the Game Boy to create this masterpiece really was just insane. And it's also one of those games where I feel like this remake of it, the way they did it, was necessary. As good as I'm not going to bash on Link's Awakening on the Game Boy. I played it back in the day at a friend's, and I played it on the 3DS Virtual Console, and I had a great time with it. But playing it more recently, like just before this one came out, it did sort of bug me, the 2-button system. Like the fact that you had to have like the bracelet or the claw thing that made you pick up things. Like you had to have that equipped whenever and you kept on getting that text box that's saying you can't pick this up. Little things like that do make it show its age, and the fact that you could have certain items permanently mapped to all these extra buttons you've got really streamlined the controls.
I do agree with you in terms of the remake. Obviously, I didn't even really touch on the remake itself there. I just spoke about Link's Awakening. But in terms of the remake, Link's Awakening as it was back then, as much as I love it, wouldn't be number one on this list had it not been for the fact they remade it ground up. And as you mentioned, the quality of life features 100%, help with that. You're spot on about the item system, the way it used to work. It wouldn't have worked these days. It would have been ridiculous had they not changed it. But aside from that, the art style, what a beautiful choice to go with that kind of plasticine look. And it's a shame there are some performance issues, some slowdown, which that does bug me, because we're talking about Nintendo here. Like this, they should be sorting that out. But I'm going to give it a bit of not a pass, but I'm going to leave it be, because I love the plasticine look, and I wish we saw that art style used more often. The Pokemon games recently, was it Diamond and Pearl, wasn't it, that they remade? Can you imagine those games with that art style?
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Oh, it'd have been lovely. It's just something about it.
Yeah.
3D games, that top-down 3D look, it can look very cheap sometimes, and games like Harvest Moon or Story of Seasons, Mineral Town, another game I love, but the new art style does look very cheap. When you use this kind of style with that chibi plasticine look, it just brings everything together. It builds that world again. Koholint Island just becomes this wondrous place because of that art style.
Yeah, and one thing that the Zelda games do a lot of different art styles. It's just how it goes, and I'd love to see them do this exact same treatment to the 2 Oracle games.
Yeah, I'd love to see that, actually. They were Capcom, weren't they? Made by Capcom, but yeah, that's a good shout. It
would be nice to see that as a 2-pack collection as well. And to get onto the dungeons in this game, I really enjoyed, because I never beat this game on the Virtual Console. I did beat it on here, and the dungeon designs, I just love the 2D dungeons in Zeldas. I just love seeing because the maps are sort of simpler in a way, because they're more squares, aren't they, on a grid, rather. But obviously the 3D ones are more interesting shapes and slopes and things, so it could be that I just love seeing, like looking at that map, what room could have a door that I've not seen yet,
exactly.
and things like that, and just finding my way around like that.
I mean, when I played it through again on the Switch, or played it for the first time on the Switch, I've told you this before, I played it and I lost a life in the first dungeon, because you've only got 3 hearts, and you know, you kind of reacquaint yourself with the length of your sword, and you know, kind of just getting your spatial awareness for the game. And I died in that first dungeon, and I was like, oh bloody hell. And then I didn't lose another life all the way through. So I played it again straight after and did like a perfect run, you know, a deathless run.
Oh wow.
I've never done that on another game ever. You know, this game, it just hooked me in to play it again straight after, and that's a special quality in a game for me.
You're actually making me want to play this again now.
I'm making myself want to play it again, to be honest. But no, great game, and that's my number 1.
Yeah. I mean, and you've got to mention stealing as well from the shop.
Yes. I know. I remember doing that the first time on the Game Boy. It was my cousin told me you could do it, and then you get called thief for the rest of the game.
And you want that bow and arrow straight away, don't you?
Absolutely. It costs a lot of money, doesn't it? That's a lot of pocket money if you don't nick it. But that's a good shout. But yeah, that's our list. So 3 games each. What did you think of our picks? I'm telling you that this is probably the most difficult list I've had to do with just 3 picks. Yeah,
same here.
And I would ask anyone in the comments section to do the same and see if you can just pick your top 3. You know, don't do a 5 or 10. I'll do it if you want, but see how hard it is to just pick 3 games. You know, you look at what you've left off and you think, oh dear me. I mean, you meant Animal Crossing, you said just now, Mario Kart, Metroid Dread, Mario Maker 2. You know, the list goes on, the amount of games we could have mentioned. So yeah, see if you can do the same in the comment section. Please do stick your favourite games in there. I want to say a big thank you to Dave for joining me for this one. Like I said, his expertise was very much appreciated. Please do check out his channel. Do you want to tell us a bit about your channel, Dave?
Yeah, I run this channel with my wife Sophie. We're called Savedex Gaming. We do a lot of live streams at the minute. We've done discussions, reviews before, but we're focusing on live streams right now. Mostly Nintendo Switch games and... am I allowed to say Xbox?
Yeah, crack on, mate. It's all right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we do where if games come to Game Pass, we'll just try them out. And also we do community streams with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe every so often. And when the new DLC for that hits, we'll get back to that as well.
Nice. I will put a link, of course, in the top pinned comment. Please do go and check out Dave's channel. It's a great channel and a lovely community that he's built over there. It's really nice. So yeah, thanks again, Dave. Much appreciated, mate.
Yeah, no problem.
Don't forget that if you do want to get yourself any eShop credit, we do sell eShop cards on our website, switchup.gg, and there's a link down there to Play Asia. Again, use the link, use the code that's down there, and you get yourself 5% off of an order from there too. A quick thank you to our patrons, of course, for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.